one cause, one goal, one destiny. On January 1st, we held a Gala Freedom Day celebration, as we do every January 1st. The African Freedom Day celebration is a day we set aside to extol the feats and accomplishments of black people and nations whose efforts brought about independence to black people throughout the world. We are extremely elated over this January 1st because the Sudan became a sovereign state on that day. On January 1st, 1956, the Sudanese people assembled in Khartoum and proclaimed their independence. That proclamation made Sudan the youngest nation today, although Sudanese history shows that it is perhaps one of the oldest nations of recorded history. I have written an article, Freedom of the Sudan, for the next issue of the Street Speaker magazine. It provides a detailed background of the Sudan and also the aristocracy, contributions, and excellence of our African origin. The article is supplemented with the picture of Sayyid Ismail el-Azhari on the cover. Sayyid Ismail el-Azhari is the most dominant figure on the political stage in Sudan. He seems to be a man of great moral integrity and political acumen, and possessed of strength of character. He will be a great asset not only to the people of the Sudan, but could be the trumpeting voice clamoring for justice for all Africa in the halls of international assemblies. The world of black people is expecting to hear from Sayyid Ismail el-Azhari, and they hope he will take up the cudgel of Africa's freedom. We are passionately fascinated with the excellence of our African origin. We are living in a world today where all progressive and enlightened people are intrigued with their respective origins. This makes it impossible for anyone to inoculate you with doctrines and philosophies that suit their interests and make you an enemy to your own progress and advancement, as are the majority of black people today. If any racial or ethnic group is captivated by the excellence of its origin, it should be black people, because of our aristocracy among the races of the world. However, we realize what the last 400 years have done to our people. We have been mad to disown our heritage and true history throughout the most consistent and diabolical system of mental and physical torture the world has ever known. The Christian church was called upon to destroy the African mind in America. Prior to the advent of Marcus Garvey, the masses of black people were victimized into believing the lying white people's claim to supremacy. Whites asserted that since time immemorial, black people have never been anything but the drawers of water and hewers of wood for them. They insisted that black people in America were a lazy, good-for-nothing race suited only to be porters and scrub women. Africa is portrayed as a vast jungle, swampland, and desert where fierce savages live. As for the black race being lazy and good for nothing, Marcus Garvey proved beyond the shadow of reasonable doubt that black people did enjoy a highly cultured civilization in Carthage, Nubia, Egypt, Ethiopia, Dahomey, and Timbuktu before the white race came out of the caves in Europe. This was before they stopped eating the flesh of their dead relatives and using the skulls of their conquered dead for utensils. Black men and women were navigating the 7 seas, wearing cloth, practicing agriculture, writing calendars, smelting iron, building beautiful cities, embalming the dead, sculpting their image in stone, and building pyramids in Africa. It has been the devout and sacred duty of white people to wipe out the black race's knowledge of themselves and make them the subservient caste creature. By being passionately fascinated with the excellence of our African origin, the lying propaganda of the white people will only expose the whites for what they really are: a bunch of land-grabbing, people-enslaving, pathological liars, and homicidal maniacs who rule the world through lies, terror, murder, and exploitation. The best description of the white man that I heard was given by Ras the murderer. Ras the murderer was one of the many black men who had organizations supporting the Ethiopian cause during the Italian-Ethiopian War in the 1930s. All these men were named Ras, the Ethiopian word for prince. For example, Ras the killer, Ras the assassin, and Ras the murderer. Ras the murderer and his version of the beginning of the white man greatly disturbed the white authorities. They watched Ras the murderer very closely. Ras the murderer kept his act very clean, but one day he spat on the sidewalk and the authorities arrested him for committing this crime. When they brought Ras the murderer before the white judge, the judge became very bellicose. He said, "So you are Ras the murderer? Who did you murder?" Ras the murderer answered, "Lying white propaganda about black people." The judge retorted, "I hear you give speeches in Harlem, mainly about the beginning of white people in a very vulgar way." Ras the murderer replied, "I will give you my personal version so that you can have the right account. It goes like this. A ball of pus wrapped in fur came rolling down the Caucasus Mountains and landed on the banks of the Caspian Sea. I looked in it and, lo and behold, it was the white man." The judge turned blood red in the face and hollered, "6 months!" There is not a foul name that you can call a white man, or a heinous crime that you can accuse him of that adequately describes him and his guilt. If you call him a murderer, you only need to refer to the American Indian and the African Bushman. If you call him a kidnapper and enslaver, you only need to refer to yourself. If you call him a rapist, you only need to refer to Eurasia, the Middle East, and yourself. The cracker has bastardized 2/3 of the world. If you call him a land grabber, you only need to refer to America, Australia, New Zealand, the Middle East, and Africa. If you call him a liar, you only need to refer to his constitution, his treaties with non-white people, his holy books, his history books, his media, and his every form of expression. The white man is a very astute liar, murderer, and cheater. These are traits of his culture pattern. Marcus Garvey wrote his lengthiest poem describing the traits and behaviors of white people. The poem, "The White Man, His Vanity Fair," starts, "Lying and cheating is the white man's game. Murdering, butchering, and killing brought him fame. The white man is a natural homicidal maniac and pathological liar. Those black people whose minds have been destroyed by a white people and have been inoculated with white psychology and white propaganda cannot be passionately fascinated with the excellence of their African origin. In fact, they have been made ashamed of their African ancestry and everything pertaining to it. The constant application of African nationalism upon the slave mentality of black people will ultimately bring a change. The present day black people are manufactured wrongos, and we will have to remanufacture them back to their normal state. We have to remove the minds of black people from white influence and control and make them aware of their true legacy and heritage before they can become passionately fascinated with the excellence of their African origin. The non-white people all over the world are becoming passionately fascinated with the excellence of their respective origins, and they are determined to remove alien influence and control from them. The exploitation and degradation practiced by white people over the black, brown, and yellow people over the last 300 years have caused the majority races to unite and rid themselves of white people. In the 1920s, Marcus Garvey asked the white race, "Are you crazy? Are you blind? Do you think that you can stop the forces of Africa and Asia combined?" And here we have in 1956, in the little Indonesian town of Bandung, 29 nations representing over 1,300,000,000 people of the colored races. They met to design the organic structure of a new world order. The delegates representing the oppressed of the current world order, as manifested by white colonialism and communist imperialism with their accompanying evils, poverty, war, turmoil, and ideological subversion, found common ground and achieved united action despite the differences of race, language, culture, and religion. I have written an article entitled Bandung and a New World Order, Colored Races Organized to Crush White Supremacy. This article will give you a more detailed breakdown on the Bandung Conference. At the Bandung Conference, every race was invited but the white race and the American-born black man. They are beginning to exclude you from the colored world and to lump you with the white man whom colored races are plotting to destroy. It started with the Chinaman in Korea. Heretofore, the colored races felt sorry for the Negro, although they sometimes found him fighting them for the whites. The Chinaman is reputed to say, "We don't have anything against you black people." But every time someone starts fighting the white man for his freedom, he looks up and sees you coming at him with a gun in your hand to kill him for the white man. I cannot feel sorry for you. I will have to wash you away. And that is what happened in Korea. The Negroes set all kinds of track records running over Pork Chop Hill and the 38th parallel, getting away from the advancing Chinaman. In that regard, you have a bad record of fighting the white man's battles. The War of Independence in 1776, the War of 1812, French and Indian Wars, the Civil War, Spanish-American War, World War I, World War II, and now the Korean War. With all this dying and fighting for the white man, and with no record of fighting for black people, the colored races are beginning to lump you with the white man, their enemy. With religion waning in influence on the minds of the caste, Negro, the white man is pushing integration as the substitute, and the caste has swallowed the bait. The caste believes the white people are ready to share America with him on an equal basis. There has been no mention of integrating the caste into the economic hierarchy or sharing the economic pie with him. Yet the naive caste believes that the white man considers him as his equal and begins socializing with the caste on equal terms. Can you imagine this economic serf of a caste here in Harlem conducting an equal social relationship with Rockefeller in Scarsdale? Rockefeller invites the caste to dinner. He sends his chauffeur-driven limousine for the caste and drives him to Rockefeller's mansion upstate. The caste is led into a 21-room mansion with a living room and a dining room bigger than the caste's apartment. The caste sits down to a 21-course meal from soup to nuts. After the meal, the caste is led to the living room and is given a $2 cigar and some of the finest and most expensive liquor in the world to wash the meal down. The caste is put back into the limousine and driven back to his house in Harlem. By the laws of reciprocity, the caste must invite Rockefeller to dinner. Rockefeller has to take a train to New York and then a subway to Harlem, where he gets off at 135th Street and 8th Avenue. He then walks 2 blocks south and 3 blocks east, goes to the basement, and rings 2 1/2 bells. At this time, the caste invites Rockefeller into his one-room basement house, gives him a milk box to sit on, and offers Rockefeller a plate of pigtails and rice. The caste is a joke. He is the laughingstock of the entire world and the willing, dedicated, fawning flunky of white people. That is why you were never invited to the Bandung Conference. Nobody takes you seriously. You are the circus clown of white society. The caste is always doing something foolish. Although he was not invited, Adam Clayton Powell Jr., the big-time caste politician and preacher, went anyway. Powell arrived at the airport in Bandung and nobody of importance met him. He tried to enter the foreign ministers' meeting at Bandung. They stopped him at the door and told him that this was a meeting for foreign ministers of nations, not for ministers of gospel or devilment. So they took Powell to a rural elementary school to address the 6th grade class, which was more fitting to his status. As Powell began concluding his speech to the class, a young Indonesian girl asked him what race did he belong to. Powell said, "The Negroes," and began his old grandfather tale. The children burst out in laughter and ran out of the class. The member nations of the Bandung Conference concluded they might as well invite the white man himself if they invited the Caste Negro, because the Caste would come back and tell the white man everything that happened. They were not wrong in that assessment, because as soon as Powell returned to the United States, he called a press conference. He said he wanted an immediate meeting with Eisenhower because he had some inside information on the Arabs' plan in Algeria and other plans of the Bandung Conference. A few weeks later, Powell was at a meeting in the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C., and he attempted to block a segregation bill and a disbursement of budgets to the public school system. An old decrepit cracker from West Virginia got up and knocked Powell down. Some say he shined his shoes in Powell's rear end. Powell got up without striking a blow and said, "He who throws the first punch admits defeat." Nobody takes the Caste seriously. That is why you were not invited to Bandung. One cause, one goal, one destiny.